You don't have to stop caring to stop hurting. You don't have to lose your heart to protect your peace. And no, you don't have to become cold to survive the heat of this world. Becoming emotionally strong doesn't mean you stop feeling. It means you stop reacting. And that's one of the most misunderstood truths in our world today. The moment people hear the words, motionless, or unbothered, they picture someone cold, detached, or numb to life. But true emotional mastery is not about becoming stone. It's about becoming still, precise, and powerful in the way you handle what you feel. Feelings are part of what make us human. Joy, sadness, anger, love, fear, they're all part of the emotional spectrum we experience. And there's nothing wrong with having those feelings. The problem starts when we let them take the driver's seat. When we become slaves to our emotions, they start running our lives. That's when decisions are made out of panic. That's when relationships are ruined by impulsive words. That's when we break down, not because we're weak, but because we've given feelings too much authority. Strength comes from being able to sit with those emotions, without letting them overpower you. You feel the anger rise, but you don't lash out. You feel the sadness creep in, but you don't sink into self-pity. You recognize jealousy, anxiety, grief, even rage, and you hold it in your awareness without letting it become your identity. That's power. Because anyone can lose control, anyone can explode, anyone can say things they later regret, but very few people can hold the storm inside them, process it, and then choose their response with wisdom. Emotional strength doesn't eliminate emotion, it refines it. Think of it like training a wild horse. You don't kill the horse, you learn how to ride it. And once you do, you don't fear where it might take you. You guide it. You direct the power, the speed, the energy, because it's under your command. That's exactly what emotional mastery is. You still feel, you still care, but you don't let those feelings lead you into destruction, regret, or emotional manipulation. In fact, the people who are the most emotionally intelligent are often the ones who have felt the deepest pain. They've gone through heartbreak, betrayal, grief, and loss. But they didn't let it turn them bitter. They learned how to channel that pain into wisdom. They let it teach them, not destroy them. And because of that, they show up in life with presence and power, not drama and chaos. We're constantly taught that to be strong is to be tough, to never show weakness. But emotional mastery doesn't mean suppressing what you feel. It means acknowledging your feelings without letting them rule your actions. You allow space for the emotion to exist, but you become the gatekeeper of how and when it's expressed. There's maturity in that. There's strength in restraint. It's easy to think that people who cry, shout, or react with intensity are the ones who feel more deeply. But the truth is, people who can feel deeply and still remain composed are the ones with the highest emotional strength. They don't shut off their feelings. They refine their ability to manage them. They know how to cry when they need to, but not fall apart every time they're disappointed. They know how to express themselves clearly without letting emotions cloud their message. And that's what makes them unshakable. Because life doesn't stop throwing challenges. People don't stop being difficult. Triggers don't stop showing up. What changes is your ability to move through it all without losing your center. That calm center, that's your power. And when you know how to access it, you become dangerous in the best possible way. People can't manipulate you. Situations don't break you. You stop being predictable. You stop being easily controlled. So many people walk around as emotional time bombs. One wrong word, one minor inconvenience, and they explode. That's not strength. That's instability. And it doesn't make you bold. It makes you vulnerable. Because anyone who can control your emotional state controls your life. They own you. Emotional strength is about reclaiming that ownership. You stop being reactive and start being strategic. You stop trying to win arguments and start protecting your peace. You don't need to explain yourself every time you feel something. You don't need to justify your silence, your boundaries, or your decisions. Emotionally strong people don't argue to prove. They speak to clarify. They don't yell to be heard. They observe, listen, and respond with precision. That doesn't make them cold. It makes them deliberate. And in a world full of noise, that kind of calmness is magnetic. There will always be people who mistake your calm for indifference. Let them. Let them think you don't care, while you carefully choose when and how to care in a way that protects your mental space. You're not here to explain your inner work to people who thrive on chaos. You're here to lead yourself from the inside out, and that starts by honoring your emotions without being hijacked by them. Being emotionally strong doesn't mean you don't feel the sting of disrespect. It means you don't give disrespect the power to pull you out of character. It doesn't mean you don't cry when something hurts. It means you know the difference between mourning and self-destruction. It doesn't mean you don't love people deeply. It means you don't lose yourself in the process of loving them. And here's the truth: the deeper your self-control, the more grounded your presence becomes. The more you discipline your emotions, the more trustworthy your decisions become. The more you stop reacting to everything that stirs you, the more others will begin to feel your authority, not because you demand it, but because you embody it. People will test you. Life will test you. You'll face rejection, disappointment, betrayal, and criticism, but none of those things have the power to break you when you've trained yourself to feel without falling. That's the skill, and it's a skill worth practicing every single day, because in mastering your emotions, you master your mind. And when you master your mind, you take full command of your life. That is the real definition of emotional strength. You are not your emotions. You are the one witnessing them. That sentence has the power to completely shift the way you live your life if you let it. Most people go through life identifying with every emotional wave that crashes through their body. When they feel anger, they say, "I am angry." When they feel sadness, they say, "I am sad." When anxiety hits, they say, "I am anxious." But those emotions are not who they are. They are just temporary states passing through. The real you is the observer behind it all. The calm center beneath the noise. The awareness that watches the storm without becoming it. It might sound abstract at first, but it's not. Think of it like this: when clouds move across the sky, you never say the sky is broken. The sky remains intact, vast, and untouched. Emotions are like those clouds. They come and go. Some are light and peaceful. Some are dark and heavy. But none of them change the essence of the sky itself. In the same way, no emotion, no matter how intense, can ever define who you truly are unless you choose to identify with it. This shift in perception is what allows you to regain control over your life. Because the moment you believe you are your emotions, you become reactive. You get caught up in every emotional high and low. You make decisions based on fear, anger, jealousy, or desperation. You say things you don't mean. You sabotage opportunities. You push away people you care about. And afterward, you're left wondering how everything spiraled so quickly. But when you step into the role of the observer, something changes. You feel the anger, but you don't let it take over. You feel the sadness, but you don't drown in it. You feel the anxiety, but you know it's just a sensation, not a sentence. You create space between what you feel and how you act. And that space is everything. That space is your power. That space is where maturity lives. This doesn't mean you suppress your emotions. It means you stop becoming them. You allow them to move through you like waves, but you remain grounded like the ocean floor. You feel, but you do not flinch. You acknowledge what's rising, but you do not attach your worth, your identity, or your decisions to it. That's emotional discipline at its highest level. Let's be clear: emotions aren't bad. They're signals. They're messengers trying to get your attention. Anger might be showing you a boundary has been crossed. Sadness might be showing you something valuable has been lost. Anxiety might be showing you that something important is at risk. These signals are useful, but they're not final truths. They're not commands. They're not fate. Your job is to listen without surrendering, to notice without becoming consumed, to respect your emotions but remain rooted in who you are. Most emotional suffering comes from resistance or identification. When you resist an emotion, you push it down, hoping it'll go away. But what you resist persists. It doesn't leave, it lingers, quietly influencing your choices in unhealthy ways. On the other hand, when you identify with an emotion, you become it. You lose the ability to see clearly because your whole lens becomes tinted by that one feeling. Both extremes steal your peace. Both make you a prisoner. So what's the alternative? Awareness, observation, detachment, not in a cold or uncaring way, but in a wise, grounded, self-protective way. You start to recognize your emotional patterns. You begin to catch your reactions before they spiral. You learn how to sit with discomfort without rushing to escape it. You no longer fear your feelings because you know you're not defined by them. There is a massive difference between saying "I am sad" and saying "I feel sadness." One becomes your identity. The other is just an experience. When you say "I am broken," you're defining yourself by your pain. But when you say "I feel broken right now," you're creating space for healing. That subtle shift in language can change everything. It gives you the authority to grow instead of getting stuck. This is what self-mastery looks like in real time. It's not about becoming emotionless. It's about becoming emotionally fluent. You understand what you feel, but you don't rush to react. You witness your thoughts and sensations, but you don't let them drag you into chaos. You see the storm, but you remember you are not the storm. You are the sky behind it. It's also important to know that this kind of awareness takes practice. You won't wake up one day suddenly immune to emotional hijack. But every time you pause instead of react, every time you observe instead of identify, you're building strength. You're reprogramming your nervous system to respond with presence instead of panic. You're rewiring your brain to make space for clarity over chaos. This work is quiet. No one will see you doing it. There won't be applause. But it's in those quiet moments, in the middle of a tough conversation, in the heat of a difficult day, in the loneliness of a sleepless night, where your power is being forged. That's where you stop being a slave to your emotions and start becoming the master of your mind. You're allowed to feel everything. You're allowed to cry, to shake, to ache. But you're not required to build your life around temporary feelings. You can let them pass through without letting them stay. You can experience them without letting them build your identity. That's what makes you resilient. Not that you never fall apart, but that you know how to put yourself back together without losing who you are in the process. When you stop identifying with your emotions, you start to see the bigger picture. You realize that much of what used to trigger you no longer holds the same weight. You begin to understand other people's emotional outbursts as a lack of awareness, not a personal attack. You grow more patient, more compassionate, more steady. And that steadiness radiates. People feel it. They start to trust your presence because it's grounded. You're no longer easily swayed. You're no longer emotionally hijacked. You've become someone who can hold space, for yourself and for others. And in a world full of emotional reactivity, that kind of presence is rare. That kind of strength is priceless. Because you've learned the truth, your emotions are visitors. They are not residents. They are weather patterns, not definitions. And when you become the observer, you finally take your place as the one who decides what stays, what goes, and how you move forward. No matter what storm shows up, people will test you. Situations will trigger you. Life will throw moments at you designed to shake your foundation. If you keep giving your emotional power away to every one of those triggers, you will live your life in a constant state of reaction. You'll be like a leaf in the wind, blown in whatever direction the world decides to push you. And when that happens, you're not in control. You're not leading your life. You're being led by everything outside of you. Emotional power is not just about feeling confident or strong in yourself. It's about having ownership of your state, your energy, your attention, and your reactions. Every time you let someone push your buttons, you hand them a piece of that power. Every time you get pulled into drama, argument, or emotional chaos, you leak energy. And that energy is not coming back. It's being spent on things that don't serve your growth, your goals, or your peace. You have to understand how expensive it is to constantly react. It takes time, energy, and mental space. And most of the time, those emotional reactions are happening because we haven't learned how to pause. We haven't trained ourselves to respond rather than react. We haven't created the space between stimulus and response. And in that space, that pause, is where emotional maturity is built. It's easy to blame people for triggering us. It's easy to say, they made me feel this way. But the truth is, no one has the power to make you feel anything unless you hand that power over. It's not what people say or do. It's what you decide to do with it internally. You might not control what shows up, but you control how long it stays. And more importantly, you control whether or not it gets to define your mood, your behavior, or your choices. Think about it. Someone insults you, and you instantly feel the need to defend yourself, to clap back, to prove them wrong. Why? Because your ego felt threatened. Because you took their words personally. But what if you didn't? What if you trained yourself to recognize that most of what people say or do is a reflection of them, not you? What if you understood that their triggers, their projections, their negativity, they're all things they're carrying, not things you need to accept? When you stop reacting, you create a gap. And in that gap, you have room to think. You have room to choose. You give yourself time to decide whether it's worth your energy. And 9 times out of 10, it's not. Most of what we react to isn't a real threat. It's a perceived threat to our pride, our image, our expectations. But reacting gives the illusion of power while silently draining you of it. This is where you learn the art of emotional self-defense. Not everything needs a response. Not every comment deserves your attention. Not every opinion needs to be corrected. And certainly not every emotional impulse deserves to be acted upon. The more you react, the more predictable you become. The more predictable you are, the easier you are to manipulate. People will learn how to get to you. They'll observe what triggers you and use it, sometimes unconsciously, sometimes very intentionally. If someone knows you're quick to anger, all they have to do is provoke you and watch you lose your center. If someone knows you're insecure, all they have to do is withhold approval, and you'll chase it. That's how power is taken. Not by force, but by reaction. The emotionally strong person is not the one who never feels. It's the one who has trained themselves to feel everything and still choose their response. They don't flinch at every jab. They don't crumble under pressure. They don't hand over control just because something discomforting shows up. That kind of control isn't coldness. It's discipline. It's self-respect. It's emotional sovereignty. And it has to be practiced. You won't wake up one morning and suddenly stop reacting. This is training. It's a commitment to observe your triggers, to study your patterns, to catch yourself in the moment and make a different choice. It's about learning to ground yourself when you want to lash out. It's about breathing through the urge to retaliate. It's about realizing that protecting your peace is more important than proving your point. Because here's what happens when you stop reacting. You become untouchable. Not in an arrogant, above everyone kind of way, but in a grounded, deeply rooted way. People can say what they want. Situations can unfold however they do, but you remain composed. You remain conscious. You remain in command. That composure gives you leverage. It gives you clarity. It allows you to move smarter, not louder. Imagine walking into every room, every interaction, every challenge with that kind of presence. Imagine how powerful it would feel to know that no one, and nothing, has the power to take you off course unless you allow it. That's not just emotional maturity. It's mental freedom. You're not imprisoned by your feelings. You're not a puppet to the world around you. You've stepped into leadership over your own life. This doesn't mean you never speak up. It doesn't mean you tolerate disrespect. It means you choose your moments wisely. You respond when it's strategic, not when it's impulsive. You speak when it's intentional, not when it's reactive. You pick your battles, and you protect your energy like it's your most valuable asset. Because it is. You have to start thinking like this. Every time you react, ask yourself, what am I giving up right now? Am I giving up my peace to prove a point? Am I giving up my energy to win an argument? Am I giving up my clarity to feed my ego? And is it worth it? Most of the time the answer will be no. The more you practice this, the more natural it becomes. You start to catch your thoughts before they spiral. You notice your body's signals, tightness, heat, tension, and instead of letting them drive you, you slow down, you regulate, you choose. That's the beginning of mastery. That's the real power. Not being unaffected, but being unshaken. Not being emotionless, but being emotionally intelligent. And that intelligence becomes your armor. It becomes your weapon. It becomes your peace. You're no longer easily provoked. You're no longer drained by every interaction. You're no longer distracted by every emotional hit. You stay in your lane. You hold your standard. And the people around you begin to notice. They stop playing games with you because they know it won't work. They stop trying to manipulate you because they know you see through it. That's power. And it's yours to claim. You just have to stop giving it away. Peace isn't found in proving your point. It's not hidden inside the applause of others. It doesn't come from convincing people to like you or understand you. Real peace comes from releasing the need to perform, to be accepted, to be validated by anyone outside of yourself. When your focus shifts from being seen to being steady, you unlock something most people never find: inner freedom. That kind of peace is rare, and that's exactly why it's powerful. There's a deep exhaustion that comes from living your life as a performance. When everything you do is filtered through the lens of how others might perceive you, you lose yourself. You shape-shift, you contort, you over-explain, you soften your voice when you should speak boldly, you stay silent when something deep inside you is screaming to be heard. And all of it comes from the belief that peace is found in pleasing others. That if you can just keep everyone happy, if you can avoid conflict, if you can win approval, then you'll finally feel okay. But that version of peace is a trap. Because it's conditional. It depends on things outside your control. Other people's moods, their opinions, their acceptance. And the moment they shift, which they always do, you're back to chasing again. Back to shrinking. Back to performing. Back to feeling like who you are isn't enough unless it's filtered, polished, or justified. Choosing peace over performance means you stop running that race. It means you stop handing your worth to the people who were never meant to carry it. It means you let go of needing to be liked by everyone and start focusing on being real with yourself. There's a stillness that comes when you no longer need to prove. You don't overshare to gain sympathy. You don't defend your every choice. You don't beg for someone to understand what you already know in your soul. It's not about being cold or disconnected. It's about being rooted. It's about knowing that your inner world matters more than the noise around you. That doesn't mean you don't care. It means you've learned to care wisely. You give your energy where it's valued, not where it's drained. You speak where you're heard, not where you're dismissed. You show up fully, but only where your presence is respected. Living this way doesn't make you arrogant. It makes you intentional. Because when you spend your life trying to perform for others, you start abandoning yourself. You silence your intuition. You ignore your needs. You say yes when you want to say no. And every time you do that, you chip away at your own peace. You begin to feel resentful, burnt out, and lost. Not because you're doing too much, but because you're doing the wrong things for the wrong reasons. The truth is, you don't need to explain your growth. You don't need to apologize for evolving. You don't need to justify your silence, your boundaries, or your healing. The people meant for you will understand, and the ones who don't were never truly seeing you anyway. Let them misunderstand. Let them form their opinions. Let them create their stories. That's their business. Your business is staying true to the path that gives you life. When you choose peace, you choose clarity. You begin to make decisions based on alignment, not anxiety. You stop asking, "What will they think?" and start asking, "Does this honor me?" That question alone will save you years of unnecessary suffering. It will guide you through conversations, relationships, career choices, and transitions. Because when your peace becomes your compass, your life stops being about performance and starts being about purpose. People might not understand this shift. Some will accuse you of being distant, selfish, or too focused on yourself. Let them. That's the cost of choosing peace. Not everyone will follow you into this space. Some are addicted to chaos. Some only value you when you're playing a role that benefits them. And when you stop performing, when you start showing up as your real, grounded, emotionally steady self, they won't know what to do with that. Let them go. If your peace disrupts someone else's control over you, it was never peace to begin with. It was manipulation dressed as harmony. There's a deep strength in learning to sit with discomfort without rushing to fix it, in learning to say less when everything in you wants to defend your truth, in choosing silence over chaos, in choosing solitude over people who make you question your worth. That's not weakness. That's wisdom. That's what happens when you begin to trust yourself more than the opinions around you. And it's not always easy. There will be moments when the urge to perform creeps back in. When someone questions your choices, and you feel the need to explain. When someone disapproves, and you feel the need to shrink. When someone pulls away, and you feel the need to chase. Those are the moments where you pause. You breathe, and you remember who you are. You remember that your worth was never supposed to be dependent on someone else's recognition. The more you practice this, the more natural it becomes. You walk into rooms without needing to be the loudest voice. You enter conversations without the need to prove your intelligence or value. You show up to relationships without trying to earn love, because you know you already carry it within you. That's the power of choosing peace. It brings you back to yourself. It silences the noise. It returns you to what's real. You'll start to notice how much energy you save, how much space opens up in your mind when you stop rehearsing conversations that don't matter. How much clarity you gain when you stop filtering your truth through the lens of someone else's expectations. That energy, that clarity, that space, that's yours. That's your life force returning to you after years of being spent on performances that never filled you. So start practicing this in the small moments. When someone questions you, don't rush to explain. When you're tempted to say yes to something that drains you, pause and check in. When you feel misunderstood, remind yourself that understanding isn't owed to everyone. When you feel the urge to perform, ask yourself who you're trying to please and whether it's worth the cost. Your peace is not a prize for being perfect. It's a practice. It's a decision you make every day to value your inner alignment over outer approval, to honor your truth even when it's uncomfortable, to choose stillness over noise. And every time you do, you step further into your strength. Not the kind of strength that needs to be seen or applauded, but the kind that builds silently from the inside out. The kind that makes you unshakable, unbothered, and completely at home within yourself. Silence is a language. It speaks with more power than most words ever could. When someone tries to provoke you and you choose not to engage, that silence is not weakness. It's control. It's awareness. It's the clear sign that you are no longer available to be pulled into emotional traps. Most people believe power is found in expression, in saying more, in responding quicker and louder. But the truth is, the person who can sit in silence without breaking is the one who holds the real strength. There's something deeply commanding about someone who doesn't feel the need to respond to everything. Someone who has trained themselves not to be baited by disrespect. Someone who recognizes that not every comment needs a comeback and not every insult requires a defense. Silence isn't the absence of emotion. It's the presence of self-control. And in a world addicted to noise, that self-control is rare. Think about how often people react impulsively. One disrespectful word and they explode. One disagreement and they escalate. One opinion they don't like and they start arguing. It's not because they're strong. It's because they're reactive. And when you're reactive, you're predictable. That makes you vulnerable. Anyone who can trigger you, controls you. But when you can hear something disrespectful and still choose to stay composed, you take that power back. You don't flinch. You don't respond on command. You don't perform. You observe. That's the quiet strength of silence. It doesn't beg. It doesn't chase. It doesn't explain. It simply holds its ground. And in doing so, it communicates everything. When someone disrespects you and you stay silent, they feel it. When someone tries to get under your skin and you don't react, they notice. When someone expects chaos and gets calm instead, they lose control. That silence creates space. And in that space, truth is revealed. People show their character when they can't manipulate your emotions anymore. This isn't about suppressing what you feel. It's about mastering when and how you express it. You don't owe everyone your reaction. You don't owe everyone your thoughts. There's wisdom in restraint. There's power in patience. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is say nothing and let your stillness speak for itself. Because silence isn't passive. It's intentional. It's a strategy. And if you use it right, it becomes a force more impactful than any argument. Some of the most dangerous people in the room are the ones who know how to stay quiet when everyone else is panicking. They don't get rattled. They don't get loud. They don't need attention. Their presence alone demands respect because they've trained themselves to respond from strength, not from ego. They don't react to be right. They wait to be effective. That kind of emotional discipline is not natural. It's earned. It's built through discomfort. Through moments where you want to scream but you breathe instead. Through experiences that taught you the cost of saying too much, too soon, to the wrong people. Silence also teaches you things words can't. When you're quiet, you start noticing what's real. You see who respects you without needing your constant validation. You see who values your energy without always being fed your attention. You see who's trying to provoke you to feel powerful themselves. And you learn to distinguish between people who genuinely care and people who only show up to see if they can shake your peace. That's why silence is not just a defense. It's a filter. When you stop reacting, you stop feeding toxic dynamics. You stop fueling manipulation. You stop rewarding bad behavior with your energy. And you start protecting your mental clarity. You stop draining yourself trying to be understood. You stop defending your truth to people who are committed to misunderstanding you. Because now, your peace matters more than their perception. You don't need to win the argument. You don't need to correct every false narrative. You know who you are, and that's enough. There will be moments where staying silent feels difficult. Especially when your pride is triggered. When you want to clap back. When you want to prove a point. But pause in that moment. Ask yourself, if I react right now, who benefits? Am I responding from power or from pain? Am I defending truth or just feeding my ego? Often, silence will be the louder answer. It will say more by saying nothing. Silence doesn't mean you ignore your values. It doesn't mean you tolerate disrespect. It means you pick your moments with precision. You speak when it serves growth, not just your pride. You respond when it's necessary, not when it's expected. You hold your ground with grace, not noise. That's what separates the emotionally intelligent from the emotionally impulsive. Not what they feel, but what they choose to do with what they feel. And here's something else: silence isn't just powerful with others. It's powerful with yourself. When you stop filling every quiet moment with noise, you start hearing your own intuition. You hear your needs, your patterns, your wounds. You learn what's really driving your reactions. You begin to notice where your peace was being stolen by your own need to constantly explain, fix, prove, or please. In silence, you meet yourself, and in meeting yourself, you finally start understanding how to protect what matters. The world wants your attention. It wants your energy, your reaction, your involvement. It thrives off your emotional chaos. But you don't owe the world your instability. You don't owe anyone access to every corner of your emotional life. The most powerful version of you is not the one who always has something to say. It's the one who knows when silence says it all. So practice it. Start small. When someone says something unkind, breathe before you speak. When you feel triggered, pause before you act. When you're tempted to defend yourself, ask if it's worth the cost. When you want to speak just to fill the space, sit in it instead. Let that silence become your armor. Let it become your message. Let it become the statement that says, I don't need to prove myself to anyone. I don't need to be reactive to be strong. I don't need to be loud to be heard. Because silence, real, intentional silence, isn't about hiding, it's about choosing. Choosing not to play the game. Choosing not to let your emotions be used against you. Choosing to hold your peace in a world that constantly tries to rob it. That's what makes silence powerful. That's what makes it the loudest voice in the room. And when you learn to master that voice, you become unstoppable. You don't need to get cold to survive in this world. You need to get controlled. There's a massive difference between becoming emotionally numb and becoming emotionally disciplined. One is avoidance. The other is mastery. One shuts you down and makes you brittle. The other opens you up but strengthens your foundation. And that's what most people don't understand. They think that in order to protect themselves, they have to harden, they have to disconnect, they have to stop caring. But the moment you lose your heart, you lose your humanity. And when you lose your humanity, you become everything you were trying to defend yourself against. The world will hurt you. That's a fact. People will betray you. Life will disappoint you. Circumstances will break your expectations. You will love people who don't love you back. You will give and be taken for granted. You will open up and be judged for it. And every time that happens, there's a voice inside that says, shut down, stop feeling, stop trusting, stop caring. That voice promises you safety. It promises you that if you just become colder, you won't feel the sting anymore. But what it never tells you is that it also takes away your joy, your depth, your ability to truly connect. Because you can't numb the pain without numbing everything else too. That's where control comes in. When you become controlled, you don't stop feeling. You start managing your feelings with precision. You don't close off your heart. You protect it with boundaries. You don't lose your empathy. You use it strategically. You stop giving yourself away recklessly and start choosing where your energy goes. And that's the difference between surviving and thriving. People who are cold, they survive. But people who are controlled, they thrive. They move through the world with awareness, with poise, with quiet strength that doesn't need to shout to be heard. Being controlled means you can look at someone you love and recognize when they're not good for you. It means you can care about someone deeply and still walk away because you know what your peace is worth. It means you can forgive without opening the door. You can feel the heartbreak but not let it define you. You can carry pain without it controlling your decisions. It means you can be soft, but strong. It means you can have compassion without being consumed. Getting cold might give you a wall, but getting controlled gives you a shield. Coldness isolates you. Control protects you. Coldness rejects connection. Control filters it. Coldness shuts out vulnerability. Control gives you the discernment to know when vulnerability is safe and when it's not. Because make no mistake, vulnerability isn't weakness. It's a superpower when used wisely. But if you don't have control, your vulnerability becomes a weapon people can use against you. You give too much. You trust too quickly. You pour out energy with no filter. And eventually, you're drained, resentful, angry. And that's when most people turn cold. But what if you chose differently? What if instead of numbing yourself, you trained yourself? What if you built emotional discipline the way athletes build physical strength? Through repetition, through resistance, through awareness and correction. What if you chose to keep your heart, but guard it wisely? To stay open, but not foolishly exposed. That's what control gives you. It gives you the power to feel everything and still act from a place of clarity instead of chaos. Control is not about being uptight. It's not about suppressing your personality. It's not about acting stoic or pretending you don't care. It's about self-command. It's about knowing your emotional triggers and not letting them run the show. It's about catching yourself when your past is trying to dictate your present. It's about pausing before reacting, listening before responding, reflecting before assuming. It's about thinking about the long game instead of just the moment. That's real power. That's the kind of inner strength that doesn't fade under pressure. When you are controlled, you don't hand your emotional state over to everyone who demands it. You don't let other people's behavior dictate your character. You stop mirroring the chaos around you and start creating calm within you. People won't always understand that. They might call you distant. They might accuse you of being cold. Let them. You're not here to live up to someone else's definition of what it means to care. You know you still feel deeply. You know your heart is still alive. But now, you're in charge of it. You're not giving it away just to be accepted. You're not leaking it in places that only deplete you. You'll know you've stepped into control when you can sit in silence while others demand a reaction. When you can choose to walk away instead of proving your point. When you can see the manipulation but refuse to play the game. When you can love someone and still say no. When you can feel the urge to lash out and choose grace instead. That level of control isn't about denying your humanity. It's about honoring it. Too many people confuse being controlled with being fake. But being fake is about pretending to be something you're not. Being controlled is about owning who you are without giving everyone access to it. It's about showing up authentically, but not carelessly. It's about choosing how and when and with whom you share your depth. Because not everyone deserves it. Not everyone can handle it. And you're not required to bleed emotionally just to prove you're alive. Control means you can sit in your emotions, let them rise, let them speak, and still remain grounded. You don't have to push them away. You don't have to drown in them either. You can observe them, understand them, and then act in a way that aligns with who you want to be, not just how you feel in the moment. That kind of mastery is rare. Most people are prisoners to their feelings. They ride emotional roller coasters every day and call it passion. But passion without discipline is just chaos. Fire without direction will burn you, not build you. And it's not just about relationships with others. It's about your relationship with yourself. Control helps you keep promises to yourself. It keeps you from self-sabotage. It keeps you from chasing temporary highs that lead to long-term pain. It helps you delay gratification, stay committed, and act from your values instead of your impulses. That's not being rigid. That's being in alignment. That's being intentional. That's being powerful in your own life. There will be moments where you're tempted to go cold again. When someone hurts you, and you feel the instinct to shut down. When you're disappointed, and you want to disconnect. When things don't go your way, and you want to stop caring completely. Don't become what hurt you. Don't let the pain of the past mold you into someone you're not meant to be. Let it teach you, let it guide you, but don't let it harden you. Because the people who make it through the hardest things and still choose to feel, that's real strength. Not because they never got hurt, but because they chose healing over hardening, growth over bitterness, control over coldness. You don't have to pretend you don't care. You just have to stop letting your caring be used against you. You don't have to stop loving. You just have to stop abandoning yourself to be loved. You don't have to close your heart. You just have to close the doors that were never meant to be opened in the first place. That's control. That's choosing what enters your life and what stays out. That's emotional boundaries. And emotional boundaries are not barriers. They are bridges to peace, to self, respect, to clarity. You'll know you've embraced control when you no longer look for peace in other people. When you stop needing apologies to move on. When you stop needing closure to heal. When you stop needing attention to feel valuable. When your sense of power comes from how you manage your internal world, not how the external world treats you. That's emotional independence. And emotional independence is the foundation for real freedom. So no, you don't need to become cold. You don't need to stop feeling. You need to train your feelings. You need to teach your nervous system how to handle pressure. You need to discipline your attention. You need to become fluent in your own emotional language so no one else can translate it for you. You need to be the one who decides what your triggers mean, what your feelings deserve, and what your heart can hold. Because at the end of the day, the strongest people aren't the ones who feel the least. They're the ones who feel everything, but don't let it control them. They've been through the storm, but the storm didn't make them bitter. It made them wise. It made them aware. It made them deliberate. And now they move with a quiet confidence that no one can steal. Because they didn't get cold. They got controlled. They didn't shut down. They rose up. They didn't stop caring. They just learned how to care without collapsing. That's the path. That's the goal. That's the real emotional mastery. To be a person with a heart that's still open but protected. A soul that's still soft but never foolish. A mind that's sharp but calm. A presence that's steady, clear, and completely unshakable. Not because you stopped feeling, but because you finally learned how to lead what you feel instead of being led by it. And that kind of power doesn't need to be loud. It just needs to be real.